friend of mine, Frank Stiles, was the caretaker at the Fruitland Bible Camp, which is located next to the ranch. Most of the history of the ranch I learned from him. He passed away in 2011. I interviewed Frank at the old Buchanan farmhouse site down by the willow tree and the lilacs. The farmhouse is gone now. It burned down. There's a book, Pioneers of the Columbia, that also has a bit of history of the area. We named the ranch Coyote Canyon Ranch due to it being located at the entrance to Coyote Canyon. The creek that winds its way through the ranch is called Orapakan Creek. I asked Frank what it meant, thinking it was an Indian name meaning something like soars with eagles or runs with bear. He told me it was named after an Indian named Charles Orapakan, who used to camp by the bridge next to the willow tree. That was halfway home for him between the town of Hunters and his home on the Spokane Reservation. That was a 2-day trip by wagon in those days. I said to Frank, "You mean the creek was named after a guy named Chuck? Go figure." Frank also mentioned that along the fence line on the west side of the Bible Camp field was the historic Hudson Bay Trail. It would wind its way north over the creek bridge, which is gone now, and continue past the Buchanan farmhouse, then west towards the old schoolhouse, which is also gone, except for part of the foundation. I have not been able to confirm this, but Frank wasn't known to be an exaggerator. The farmhouse belonged to Edward Buchanan. It was a large 2-story building that faced west towards the main road at the time. I was fortunate enough to attend his sister's, I believe it was her 90th birthday party. The stories about the ranch were incredible, all told by grandkids and all successful. A U.S. Marshal and an attorney were in the mix. They indicated that there were 18-inch trout in the creek at one time. I told the marshal that he shouldn't fib like that. He insisted he wasn't. When Edgar was dying in the hospital, his grandchildren asked if there was anything he wanted. Supposedly, he said he just wanted to have some spring water that flows from the bank on the north side of the creek about 100 yards west from the old farmhouse. He got his wish. In 2009, I applied for a forest health tree thinning program through the USDA. I was approved for 2010, but was not able to start any work due to a historic research hit on the ranch. I was unable to find what that was all about. It could have been Indian related or due to the Fruitland Bible Camp being a 75-year-old historic camp, or even the Hudson Bay Trail. We were finally able to complete the work. We now have 80 acres that have been thinned through the program. There is a minimum of another 80 acres that could be in that program or a similar one. The small 2-bedroom gray house adjacent to the shop belonged to Bob Krast, who has now passed away. He was a part of another pioneering family in the area. Bob was a longtime friend. When he went into a retirement home, I purchased his property. Bob was considered slow mentally and wasn't able to speak clearly, but he could fool me. On more than one occasion, Bob would tell me how to do something that made more sense than a modern-day engineer. His dad built Bob's house on what was once a part of their large ranch. He did not want Bob to want for a roof over his head. I was going to make a local area museum out of his house. The dairy was operational until about 18 years or so ago. The operation consisted of about 125 cows. I had the milking equipment removed from the main building. The current layout of the dairy consists of an older, as-is, mobile home in which a caretaker resides, a milking parlor, which is used for storage, 2 loafing barns, which are located directly to the rear of the milking parlor, and used for hay storage. 2 grain silos, which are located at the rear of the loafing barns. A hay pole shed, which is used for farm equipment. And finally, 3 calving sheds. All buildings are in an as-is condition. Google the address of the dairy, 5889 West End Road, Fruitland, Washington, 99129, for a map of the area and a layout of the dairy. The creek has fish in it, and there are beaver ponds the complete distance from one end of the property to the other. Geese and duck use the ponds at different times of the year. Other animals on the ranch that use the creek are deer, elk, moose, black bear, turkey, and not to mention coyotes, badger, and occasional cat, either a cougar or bobcat, but I haven't seen either for 10 years. In 28 plus years of owning the land, I haven't allowed anyone but myself and another friend or two to hunt occasionally. However, in the last several years, I entered into an agreement with the Washington State Game Department to allow some additional hunting by written permit only. The Game Department patrols and checks all hunters for having this permit issued by me in their possession. Recently, a young friend of the family who has never hunted before was allowed to try his hunting skills. He didn't harvest an animal. However, during his early modern firearm season, he saw a black bear and a trophy whitetail buck. Before my stroke, 10 plus years ago, while horseback riding, I came upon 2 trophy bucks, less than 75 feet away from me. They were fighting. That was a rare sight, especially during the day. If you look at a map of the ranch, there are approximately 40 acres of state land which are landlocked in the middle. I have a grazing lease for it and an easement to travel through it. The state has an easement to access it for natural resources only, with no public access. They are required to give proper notice if they plan on, for example, harvesting timber. Also, they are required to put all access roads in the condition that they found them. The acreage is like having an additional 40 acres added to the ranch. The lease is transferable. However, the person that it transfers to has to show that they are experienced with grazing type animals. To the west of the ranch, there are approximately 260 acres of Department of Natural Resource land. With all the DNR land acreage in the ranch, 40 acres plus 260 plus 566, there are approximately 866 acres to enjoy for horseback riding, hiking, hunting, or anything outdoors. Of the 566 acres, approximately 130 are tillable. The majority of all other acreage is timberland. The taxes are low for the ranch due to it being timberland and agriculture, less than $3,000 annually. My plan for the ranch was to make it into a camp for troubled youth. I wanted to convert the loafing sheds into dorms where girls, boys, and counselors would stay. They would learn about the land, animals, and in general nature. They would learn about business, a coffee company, and a give-back program based on cooperation towards an agreed-upon goal. This was my vision. What's yours? The ranch has road access, and with that, there are so many possibilities. I have had well-traveled people from different backgrounds and areas of the country that have told me that the ranch is beautiful and that there is a special feeling that comes over them from this land. I can't argue that. You don't know how hard it is for me to sell the property. Tears well up when I think I may never see it again. Thanks for stopping by.